Kingmaking, a terrible problem in board games. Everything comes down to that final turn, and one player, the player that's not even in contention for the victory, is going to decide who wins the game. That's not what we want in a board game, right? I mean, this is actually a problem. I mean, I'm making a video on this, so this has to be an issue. So let's actually dive into this. What is kingmaking? When does it happen? And really, is this an issue in board games? Welcome to my channel. My name's Chance, and today, obviously, I'll be talking about kingmaking. Now, for this discussion, I'm going to be leaning on two what I think are fantastic games. Definitely not games for everybody, so highly recommend watching some other reviews, diving into these if you are interested. But I think they will highlight some different aspects that we can kind of help dive in and investigate this kingmaking issue a little bit more. One game over here is going to be Zoo Vadis. Now, Zoo Vadis, I think, will teach us a little bit about varying player perspectives for board games and what is actually a victory for a player. This discussion is actually going to be based around an episode of the podcast So Very Wrong About Games. I think in one of their episodes, they presented a very interesting question around victory for players and what victory conditions mean to different players. And that's kind of what I'm going to be kicking off my discussion. I'll leave the link to the podcast down below, the podcast episode that I'm talking about, and I highly recommend giving a listen if you're interested in this topic at all. Now, the other game I have over here is Inis. Inis is a game where I believe the designer, Christian Martinez, was told about the kingmaking problem, and he basically said, problem? That sounds like a game. And then he created Inis. So let's dive into this and let's see what we can learn from these two games. So here we are with Zoo Vadis. I think this game has one of the most interesting victory conditions out of any game I've played. Now, players are trying to achieve two things in Zoo Vadis. One, they're trying to have the most victory points. You're going to be collecting these little tokens on the board throughout the game, and whoever has the most victory points at the end is potentially going to win. But the other condition that they have to meet is that they have to get one of their meeples into the star exhibit. So here I have half the board set up with a bunch of meeples out here and the star exhibit at the top end of the board here. Now, at the beginning of the game, there's enough spaces for every player. But as the game goes on, this can fill up and there is no limit to the number of spaces one player can take up. And there's also some neutral pieces. We got this little peacock here that can be moved into that final exhibit space, blocking some players from that final victory condition. And I think that So Very Wrong About Games and their podcast titled Calling It a Win, they asked a really interesting question. They said something along the lines of, what is more of a win for a player if they're in a state where they cannot actually win the game? Is it being in that final exhibit, or is it having the most victory points? I don't think there's a right answer to this. Either way, the player has essentially, they've lost, and it depends on what they value more. So if they're not in the final exhibit, they can't win. But if they don't have enough victory points, they also can't win. So either way, they're not in contention for that victory, but it's just up to what that player perceives as a win for them in that game. And I actually think that this can highlight one of the problems I see with declaring kingmaking in a game sometimes. So here I have a setup where this is similar to the state of the game that I had a couple weeks ago. And what happened is it's currently the tiger's turn. So the tiger over here, but he actually already has a meeple in the star exhibit. So the tiger doesn't need to get another meeple in there. They just need more victory points. Now, they can always move the neutral piece. So we got the peacock over here. They can move the neutral piece and gain one victory point and basically just end the game by taking up that last spot that I have here in the final exhibit. Or they know that down here, the lemurs have not made it into the final exhibit yet, and their turn is right after the tigers. So this sets up one of my favorite conditions in this game is the tiger is perfectly positioned to do some just minor extortion of the lemurs. Essentially, they get to say, hey, if you want this game to continue, you're gonna have to give me some victory points. And that's some of the negotiation that can kind of go down in the end of Zoo Vadis. Some of you may have just cringed and been like, ooh, God, that sounds terrible. To me, this is what I consider exciting. But moving on, the condition here now is that we don't know what the lemur player values more. And we've actually just set up the conditions required for a king-making scenario, because this is possibly the deal that will decide the game. If the lemur agrees to give the tiger victory points, those may be the victory points that the tiger needed. So the lemur probably has no hope of being the victor anymore, even if they get into that star exhibit, because they have to give up some of their points to that tiger. That tiger, that's all they needed in the first place. So if this lemur goes through with this deal, the tiger is probably walking away with the win. Now, if they don't make the deal, maybe everyone knows that the crocodile has been doing pretty well this entire game. No one's really been much competition for him. So he's probably set up for the victory already right away. So now the lemur's in a state where if they don't make a deal, the crocodile wins. If they do make a deal, the tiger wins. This is kind of the definition of king-making. So the lemur's not in contention for the win, they're just choosing who wins the game. But overall, I think that this isn't really an issue as long as this player, as long as this lemur, the person playing the lemur here, they are making a choice that is aligned with their perception of value in this game. Do they value being in the star exhibit? Then if that's what they think is the best win for them, maybe they're willing to give up all of their victory points just to have that opportunity to be at the table. Maybe they're just saying, like, I want to have all the victory point tokens. Like, if I give you any, I know I had no opportunity to win, so I don't really care if I'm in the star exhibit. And maybe they say, I'm not making a deal with you, tiger. Get out of here. And that decision allowed the crocodile to win. But in both of these cases, the lemur player didn't say, I want the tiger to win or I want the crocodile to win. They made a choice based on their perception of value in this game. And I think this happens a lot in games. And I think Zoo Vadis was the example I wanted to use because it provides this clear distinction between these victory conditions and how different players may perceive different types of value. Like one player may want to be in that star exhibit, one player may just want to have a lot of victory points. But let's think about this in the case of like a Euro game. So we can set up a similar situation in a Euro game where one player, possibly their action, is going to cause a swing in the point value at the end of the game. So maybe they have the choice of saying, I'll take a certain tile or token or whatever trophy for a total of 3 points, so boost my score by 3 points, or they could take something that potentially blocks a player that's in contention for first. Maybe they take something that causes like a 10-point swing for that player in first. Now, in this state, the question to me that I want to ask is, what does the player think is the valuable action here? Are they trying to just max out their point score before the end of the game? So maybe getting that 3 points is the best action they can do because that's just the most points they can gain on their turn. But what about a player that might just value having a smaller gap between them and first? In that case, that player might want to be blocking another player from gaining a 10-point turn. Maybe they say, oh, well, if I don't take this card, then you're gonna just rocket ahead and that's gonna be like, you're gonna have a blowout win and that's no fun for me. So maybe their choice is, hey, I just wanna reduce this gap and make this a tighter spread. In that case though, they're probably playing Kingmaker. Maybe those 10 points for that player, that was the points they needed to be in first place. So by that player choosing that action, they blocked that player from getting their victory and they chose someone else to win. But once again, this is all down to that player's perception of value in the game. Now, I'm not saying Kingmaking doesn't exist because of this. I'm just saying that a lot of times Kingmaking can be called out in situations where I don't think it deserves to be called out. This is where it's coming down to that final turn and it is up to that player. They have been thrown into this position where they have to make this choice where someone is probably going to be upset. And that's unfortunate. Now, that being said, like I said, it's not that Kingmaking is not a problem. And that's where I want to go into my second game. So let's move on over, let's go and take a look at Inis. So next up, we have Inis. This is a game ripe with Kingmaking. So in Inis, players are competing to achieve one of 3 victory conditions. Basically, they need to rule over 6 clans, be present in territories with 6 or more sanctuaries, or just be present in 6 territories total. if they achieve one of those victory conditions, they get to take what's called a pretender token. This is them declaring that, hey, I think I'm gonna be king because I have achieved one of the victory conditions. Instantly, the rest of the table says, okay, now we're making a short-term alliance and we're gonna try to take you down because we don't want you to be king. And that's how Inis plays out. I think if you're willing to go with this type of structure in a game, it is absolutely phenomenal, but it drives some people absolutely insane because this is a game of just literally bashing the leader. Like if someone takes that pretender token, you're gonna go out and hit them. Now, I would say that Inis could be rethemed as Dune, and it'd fit perfectly because this is plans within plans within plans. This is where players are trying to, when that player takes a pretender token, you might be trying to convince your short-term alliance like, hey, maybe you should do something about them. I can't do anything about them. But behind the scenes, you're trying to set yourself up for that next victory condition. You're trying to get them to waste their actions so now they can't stop you with your victory. And for me, this is probably one of the best experiences I can have in an area control game. Now here I have a fake setup, but I'm using this to kind of represent a similar end state that I had with a recent 5-player game of Inis that I did. Now, unfortunately for me, in the penultimate round, right, like the round before the last year, I made my gambit for the victory. I was trying to be a little coy and not reveal any of my plans, and then all of a sudden I got called out before I was ready, and someone's like, "Oh, Chance is about to win. We should probably do something about that." My entire army got wiped off the board. I was left with just 2 people out there for the final round, which is not a good place to be in Inis. And going to the final round, I kind of knew like I was not in contention for the victory anymore. But I was put in this interesting situation because Inis has a card called the Geist card that allows you to just cancel someone else's action. So that threw me in a position where there were 3, probably all 4 other players were competing for a victory condition. I was the only one that wasn't able to grab a pretender token that round, so I would say all 4 were in contention, but there were 3 that were in a little bit stronger position. And all 3 of these were fighting for that victory condition. Now, because I had the Geist card, I could have played the role of Kingmaker. I could have canceled someone's action. I actually could have prevented probably 2 people from doing something effective in the game, just due to how the game played out. There's one action card that allows other players to kind of tag along in a certain case, and I could have canceled that one, preventing 2 players from kind of breaching their victory goals. And then that would have decided the game for 1 player versus others. So once again, this would have been me playing Kingmaker. Now in my game, I decided that I was enjoying watching the other players enjoy the game of Inis, enjoy the politics of Inis, and trying to eke out those victories. For me, I decided that I basically conceded and was like, I'm just gonna pass and see what happens. I'm just gonna keep on passing every round and just watch this play out, because my clan was kind of like, you know, in my head, the theme that I had going, yep, okay, you guys crushed us, we're gonna stand back. You guys can figure out who's king. As long as you keep killing each other, we're totally fine with it. So that was my position with the game. But let's say I actually did decide to use that Geist card. Let's say I did decide to kind of take that role of Kingmaker and kind of choose who was going to win. Would that have been wrong in this game? This is where I think Inis provides an interesting look at this problem, because, as I mentioned before, this is a game where the designer said, Kingmaking? Nah, sounds like a game. And Inis is all about the politics. It's all about the clans interacting with each other and the players interacting with each other. The game space almost invites you to do those types of actions. That Geist card, even though I wasn't in contention for the win, that was could have been my clan's vote for who I thought should be leader. Maybe I could have been like, oh, blue has been a real pain in the to me, so I don't really want them around anymore. I'm gonna cancel them because that guy's just been awful this entire game. So they picked on me way too much, right? That is an option. I think in this game, that's the type of play that it is trying to promote. That's the type of play that it's trying to invite. If players are willing to go with it, I think that can create a great experience in this game. But I can see that I can see that being a turnoff for some people and a turnoff for some groups. But I think if you're willing to lean into those types of things, this is where, in this case, Kingmaking isn't really the problem that it seems to be. I would say the entire game has been building to that moment. That final set of turns, that final round, this game has been building to this crescendo. Every action that every player has been taking has been getting to this moment in that game. So that choice would have been part of that system of this game. It would have been part of the politics, part of the action system that has been going on here with the players. And I think that's true of the other game I was talking about. So Zoo Vadis. Like, every action that was taken in that game built up to that final state. I was talking about the tigers and the lemurs, where the tiger was basically in that state to extort the lemurs. Is that a problem in the game? Or was that a plan? Did the tiger work with the lemurs throughout the game and pretend to be a friendly partner, moving up the tracks together and voting for each other, trying to move to that star exhibit? And then as the tiger got into that position where they're like, oh, I might be able to take a little more advantage of this friendship than I thought. Is that so bad to happen in the game? Is it terrible that lemur is in that position? Or is it interesting that that final state emerged? Is it interesting and just cool that state of play managed to happen? And that's how I feel about Inis here. Like, everything we did built to the point where I was given that card. I was given that Geist card. People passed it up. They gave me that power where I could have taken that action. Now, of course, I thought it was just more entertaining watching them beat each other up, which is also a good choice. But I don't think it would have been a bad choice to do the Kingmaking card or the canceling card, even though in that case, as I was not in contention to win. Like, if I took that action, there was no hope of me taking victory. So that card was not moving me towards any type of victory condition. It was just me participating in the game of politics of Inis. Okay, with that being said, let's return back to the table here and let's do some discussion of final points. Okay, so with these two games here, I tried to provide some situations where Kingmaking was a possibility. It was a thing that could happen. Now, maybe I didn't convince you entirely that Kingmaking wasn't a problem in these situations. But overall, I wanted to just recap. In Zoo Vadis, I really wanted to highlight that point that was made in that podcast from So Very Wrong About Games. Someone's perception of value can be different than yours. So I think that occasionally, Kingmaking is being called out when it's not really justified. Maybe that player is making the choice that seems best to them, regardless of who wins. Maybe they don't even care who wins, and they just want to take the action that they think is best. And then over here with Inis, we have the fact that sometimes this is part of the game. Sometimes it's part of the system that was made. Sometimes that's part of the negotiation, the tactics, the strategy in the game. Either way, I think that these situations show up in a lot of games. I think in Zoo Vadis and Inis, maybe these hurt a little bit less because it maybe seems like part of the game system. But I see this happen in Euro games. I see this happen in card games. I see people say that they're being picked on when they're not really being picked on. People are just taking actions that they think are best for them, and some people have more of a, let's say, an egocentric view of the world where they see the game from their point of view and are unable to kind of see it from another player's point of view. Sometimes a player might be right and see that a player had a better option to them, and they are like, hey, why did you take this action that hurt me? There was a better option for you anyways. And it's like, well, maybe they didn't see it. Maybe that's not their view of the game. So I think that's an unfair thing to call out. Now, the only thing I will call out, because this came up a little bit in Inis, is that I mentioned this in one of my other videos here about, I think, how to ruin game night. And that's when a player starts making decisions that are not aligned with the goal of the game. So each game has the goal to win, and once a player kind of breaks that agreement, breaks that magic circle of the board game, and they decide to make a choice based outside of kind of those parameters, So when that choice becomes like, I want Steve to win and not Susan, it's like, well, that's not what the game says. Steve and Susan aren't in the rules. So you're currently making a choice that is not aligned with kind of the magic circle of the board game there. Now, that's where I've called out this goes into, you know, the degenerate game state where the game no longer really functions how it's supposed to. But overall, I think that Kingmaking is a little bit different. I'm not saying someone should make that choice outside of that kind of that magic circle of the game. I just think that it's not as big of a deal. Like someone making that choice in the beginning of the game where they're just like, oh, I hate Steve and I don't want him to win any board game, so I'm just gonna take all my actions to take down Steve. I think that's a broken game. I think that friend's just being a bit of a jerk. Maybe you shouldn't have played games with him. But with Kingmaking, I feel that it's viewed in isolation. And as I was talking about at the end of my Inis presentation there, these games build to these moments. These problems shouldn't be viewed in isolation. Like players took their actions, they made their choices, they made their gambits for victory, all to build to that final moment of the game. By looking at just that final turn and saying that Kingmaking is a problem, you're kind of ignoring all the planning and all the scheming that went on behind the scenes. You're ignoring everything that happened to get you there. And the last thing is that when a Kingmaking scenario happens, for those players that are in contention to win, if you're not in control of the victory, like, what are you saying? Are you saying you deserve to win? Are you saying that that player that's not in contention shouldn't really have the choice? Is that what should happen in this game? I don't know. It just feels wrong to put it in kind of that viewpoint. I think that this brings up an interesting learning opportunity in a game. To me, if I'm in a position where I see that another player can block me or can stop me from that victory condition, I want to know, oh, should I have played differently? Like, did I do something wrong with the timing in the game? Did I not understand the flow of the game? Was there a path to this game where I could have been in control of this victory? That's what I care about for my play of a game. Then lastly, I want to rephrase this. Let's say we're presenting this game with Kingmaking to someone, and I'm going to use very generic terms. We say, hey, yeah, last night I played this board game. It had these amazing mechanics. I made super cool decisions in it. I got to play with all these fun levers. There were other players, their actions mattered. There was Steve there last night. He was putting some tension on me. We were kind of vying for that victory. And overall, just amazing decisions based on this game. But then we got down to the final turn, and like Susan was there and she wasn't in contention to win, but she was able to choose who won the game. And so obviously the game has a keymaking problem, so it was terrible. I don't like it. Like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Sounds like you just played an amazing game, and what were you hoping for? Were you hoping for a blowout victory where essentially like you knew the winner by the midpoint in the game? Like what was the goal of the game night? I think that sounds amazing where you were in that close of contention. I think that, yeah, maybe you need to see if there's maybe potential issues with the game. Maybe there's a first player advantage or a last player advantage or some balance issues of some sort. Now, for me, I'm going to reference So Very Wrong About Games again and say that I belong of their class of gamers that they call the filthy casuals. I do not have the expertise to comment on balance issues in games. I am looking for a game that I can just enjoy and have fun and interact with friends. So these social experiences that I get out of things like Zoo Vadis and Inis, those are what I value on board game night. I don't value the victory. I think that if it came down to one turn, and players had a close shot at victory, and everyone had a good time, like, what does it matter in that last turn? Be proud of what you achieved. Like, if you were first or second, be happy with your play in that game. There's no reason to be upset about that final, let's say, a coin flip for who wins, except in this case, let's say Susan's choosing, and she's a very biased coin. So she might not be making a 50-50 split on that decision. But in that case, if you're going to be upset about it, like, Why don't you just flip a coin when you go to game night, and if it's heads, you can be happy, and if it's tails, you can be upset, then head on home. So that's kind of where I land with this king-making problem. Sure, it probably exists. It's probably an issue in some games, but at that point, maybe it's a problem for the serious gamers. Maybe it's a problem for the people that care about being competitive in these games and reaching those high levels of skill. Maybe they care about things like opening strategies and the dominant strategies in games. But overall, that's not my interest as a hobbyist gamer. So, king-making, is it a problem? It's a thing. I would call it a thing. I don't know if I'm going to call it a problem. It exists. Does it bother me? Not really. Not really. I think you have to decide for yourself if that's something that bothers you. And I think I want to call out that if you do have a problem with it in a game, maybe figure out why. Maybe figure out, is that actually a problem with the game? Is there an underlying issue with that game? Is that a deal breaker for you in a game? Or be like, wow, that was a close game. That was a really good game night. So that's going to do it for today. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you agree or completely disagree with this. I've seen a lot of things out there on king-making. I probably don't have the most popular opinion on it, but that's kind of how I feel. Let me know if you think I missed anything on this topic. I definitely love chatting about this stuff, so I will do my best to respond in the comments down below. And as usual, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.